Alafia, I'm Dr. Gloria Latimore-Peace, editor and publisher of Mo Better News. And today we are here to have a discussion, in fact, to do a little praising of our mothers and our fathers. The title of our program is Honor Thy Mothers and Thy Fathers. And I have with me today Bhagwan Ra Africa of the House of Ra, and Dr. Elkin Satole, Professor of Inner City Studies Education at Northeastern Illinois University. I have invited both of these people to be with me for this discussion because they are both my mentors. Bhagwan Ra Africa is my spiritual mentor, and Dr. Elkin Satole was my intellectual mentor when I was working on my master's degree at Northeastern Illinois University. I have also invited them because of their special interest in the preservation of the African family and of the traditions that has traditionally kept that family strong and intact. We know at this point in our development that we are suffering from an attrition in the African family, and what we want to do is to look at where we were, to look at where we are, and to possibly suggest ways that we can restore ourselves to our traditional greatness. First of all, I'd like to greet Dr. Elkin Satole and like to ask him to bring us greetings from his president, Nelson Mandela, and tell us something about what he does.
Very good. Thank you very much. Greetings from President Mandela, the first black president of South Africa. He has a good cabinet. I've just looking at it. There are many great men serving under him. We have never had a black government in South Africa. We have it now. We are going to discuss the African family because Africa is a very important country in the world. We have an African family in South Africa, the Zulu, the Xhosa, the Swazi, the Ndebele. All those ethnic groups have kingdoms, have great leaders, they have kings. Probably people have just heard of Shaka Zulu, but there is also the kingdom of Monomotapa. There are many other kingdoms, kingdom of the Swazi. I come from the kingdom of the Zulu. Our present King Zwelithini Zulu is the 8th king after King Shaka. There are other kings, his great-grandfathers, Dingane, H3o, Dinizulu. Dinizulu happens to be the grandfather of Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi. This daughter of King Dinizulu gave birth to Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi. And we go down the line, and every ethnic group has its family. I am a Sithole. I'm related to every Sithole you will find. We trace our relationship from a common ancestor. You will never find a Sithole saying, I'm a Sithole, but this one is no relation of mine. Like I hear here where somebody says, I'm a Kennedy, but no relation to President Kennedy, no relation to Ted Kennedy, because we trace our relationship to a common ancestor. I'm a Sithole. I am Baba Sithole because I'm a father. I have children, and those children call me Baba. And I called my father Baba. And my grandfather, Baba Mkhulu, which means great father. And I have many other fathers. My father's brother is my father. He's not my uncle, he's my father.
Your father's brother
my father's
is
brother
your father.
Is my father. And my father's sister is my father.
Your father's sister is your father.
My father's
There are
sister.
female fathers
Yes.
in your tradition.
She is Babegazi. Baba is my father. His brother is Baba, same term, and his sister is Babegazi, which means female father. And my father's brothers' children are my brothers and sisters.
Not your cousins?
They are not my cousins.
Your
They're
father's brother's children are
they're-
your sisters and brothers.
Yes, my brothers and sisters. And
Your
we're-
father's sisters' children are also your sisters and brothers?
they're my cousins.
They are your cousins.
My first cousins.
Your first cousins.
Those are my first cousins.
This gets complicated after a while.
They're my first cousins because we share their mother, not their father.
All right.
So, on the other side, when we get to the mother's side, I have cousins too, my mother's brother's children, but we share their mother.
All right.
And not
What
their
is your mother's brother? If your father's sisters are your father's, then what are your mother's brothers?
My mother's mother. My mother is Mama. Mama. I have a mother. She's very kind and oh, she will even spoil me. Very kind, loving. And I have another mother's sister.
Your mother's sister
My
is
mother's
your mother.
sister is my mother.
Not your aunt?
Not my aunt, my mother. I call her Mama. She's either Mama Mkulu if she's older than my mother, or Mama Mlani if she's younger than my mother. She's my mother. She treats me exactly like my mother, very kind and loving.
And spoils you?
Yes, she will spoil me because she won't spank me. And then my mother's brother is my mother, Malume.
Your mother's brother is a mother, a male mother.
A male mother.
Malume.
Malume. Male mother. He loves me, protects me, and is kind, just like my mother's sister, because they're all my mothers. And I call him Malume.
May I ask you if Malume has children of his own? He is their father?
Yes.
Will he spoil his children?
Now Malume has his children. To his children, he's not a mother, he's a father. They call him Baba. He's very strict, and he'll spank them, punish them, and give them the code behavior of their family. Just like my father in my family. And in the Sitole family, my father will teach me how to behave as a Sitole. Through example, he must respect his father first, respect his grandfather. Then I will learn to respect him. And now I'm a father too, I'm Baba. When I first came to this country, my kids wanted to call me Dad. Daddy, Dad. I said, I'm Baba. So that they should get to know the terminology, so that when they use it to my brother, they know also what it means. If they call my brother Baba, they know they have to respect me, respect him too, as they respect me. So my mother's brother's children are my cousins, my second cousins.
This family has many mothers and many fathers.
Oh, yes. That's why we don't have an orphanage. In Africa, we don't have an orphanage as such, because if I lose my father, I still have my father's brother. He's my father. He will still educate me, take me to school, and be responsible for me.
And you have your father's sister?
Yes, I have my father.
Who is also your father?
Who is also my father.
And she will educate you?
She will educate me.
And take you to school?
Take me to school.
Teach you the code of conduct of the Sitole?
Yes.
Teach you how to be a leader?
She is very strict on me. She has her own children. To her own children, she's a mother.
She will spoil them?
She'll spoil them. She's kind. They are not her people. The father of those children will take care of them. She will take care of me as a Sitole. And this is how the family in Zululand, the kinship structure of the Zulu. So if my father wants me to respect him, he has to respect his father. So he respects my grandfather. I don't have just one grandfather. He has brothers too. Father's father's brother is my grandfather. Father's father's sister is my grandfather, female grandfather. So all on this Sitole side, All those are Sitoles, and they are very strict, bringing me up as a good Sitole boy, and they bring up my sister as a good Sitole sister.
Are they responsible also for your mental health?
Oh, yes. If I'm crazy, my mother is to blame, because she is kind, loving, and has to see to my emotional stability. That's why if I'm crying out outside, she'll come, please, please don't cry. If the other boys are messing up with me and I run home, she will protect me first before she asks what happened. They might say, he started. My mother will say, my son doesn't start anything. And she will chase them away, and then later on she might ask, did you actually do that? Then if I say, yes, I did it, but don't do that.
I have heard that there's an African proverb that when a chicken wanders into the bush,
yes,
first you rescue him,
oh, yes,
then you spank him.
Oh, yes, exactly. You rescue the chicken first, and then
you scold him.
Scold him. Don't scold him and throw him to the wolves. You first rescue. That's how the African family is there. Because if I am not brought up as a good Sitole boy, I am lost to the family. I am a loss to the family. They don't want to lose any member of the family. Even if somebody develops some negative things, if somebody begins to steal, in African justice, it's not me who is to be punished. My father will be.
When you disobey,
oh,
your
yes,
father will be punished?
Oh, yes. My father will be responsible. So my father
That's a good system,
my
Robert.
father must take care of that. So I will be good so that I do not reflect the negative things on my father, on my brother, my sister, and my mother. So you can't just be a gangster killing people, because the impression will then be the Sitoles are killers. I don't want to get that impression. Or if you
You
steal,
don't want a reputation for your family that dishonors your family.
Yeah, this dishonors my family. So as one member of the Sitole family, I will behave right so that the Sitole family can look good. And that's why my father is responsible to bring us up correctly.
Bhagwan, Ra Africa, was that not a beautiful rendition of an African tradition that is thousands of years old? And we look at our state at this point in time when we have deteriorated to the point where we do not have several fathers and several mothers, all of whom are responsible for the welfare of the children, but we have reduced ourselves to many instances where we have single adults in the household trying to take care of the children all by themselves. What can you say? The House of Ra deals with the spiritual development of our people here in America, and especially in the Chicago metropolitan area. What can we say about the reasons for our condition at this point, besides pointing the finger away from our community toward those oppressive forces that we know exist?
Yes, yes. Well, Dr. Peace, the very first thing that we have to say is that obviously one of the consequences of our separation from the land Africa was also our separation from the wisdom that was Africa. And perhaps that's the most tragic part of the ma'afa, of the slave trade and the suffering. Not to discount or minimize the physical horror of slavery, but when one is separated from a kind of spirituality that Baba here has illustrated that exists among KwaZulus and many other tribes and many other ethnic groups throughout the continent, then we get a glimpse of how much we have really lost. And as you pointed out, that it is the case in our communities today that it is the absence of this kind of ista, is the word our Dravidian ancestors used for this kind of ideal that informs our model of what constitutes family. It is because of the absence of this understanding and this model that we are experiencing not just black on black crime with a casual person who simply happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, but brothers killing brothers, biological brothers killing brothers. So it tells you how much in need we are of the resurrection and the
Of our African
re-education
tradition.
of this great, tremendous spiritual system on which the family were based. And Dr. Peace, make no mistake about it, that what Baba Sithole has to share with us is a spiritual system that manifests itself in the form of a family. That same spiritual system, when it impacts in other institutions in African culture, original culture, will give you a different kind of government.
And a different kind of commerce.
Education, a different kind of commerce. It'll give you all of those Nguzu Saba.
All the institutions will be predicated on the same model.
Will be predicated on the same model and informed with the same level of wisdom, you see. And so if there's anything that can help heal our community, then it is this kind of knowledge that Baba Sithole here is sharing with us. And of course, to just illustrate how many ages separates us from that time and this time, most of the people in the audience that is listening to this program is still having a problem trying to process it. They weren't able to follow him because they cannot process that. How can it be that your uncle is your father? They don't understand that because they have been conditioned, you see.
Because we have the nuclear model of family.
Yes.
We have mother and dad, Dick and Jane, Spot and Puff,
Absolutely.
and Sally.
But then you have to start remaking the family by finding the big brother or the Boy Scouts to reinforce it by other means from outside. And you have a big brother syndrome.
So you have parent surrogates.
Yeah,
Is that what you're
parent
saying?
surrogates.
Okay. The teacher is in many cases a parent surrogate,
Yes.
even if the teacher does not choose to be one.
Yes.
In fact, Dr. Peace, this is one of the great crises that the educational system has come to. You have to understand that a group of people is as much a system as an individual person. And that these systems, whether they are non-human or human system, have needs. And whenever those needs are not being met, some other part of the system goes into distress and has to overcompensate for the other part that broke down. In this culture, Western culture, the institutions that are supposed to compensate in the event that a young man's father dies early, you see, or his father had no brothers and no sisters. Those are possibilities, you see. That there will be other systems that will kick in. And this culture here, all of that is collapsed. And the only part that is still standing that offers us some way out of this dilemma is the educational system in the form of teachers. And so as Baba Sithole just pointed out, very often you will find, therefore, that innately there's a need. It's just built into human nature for a mother. The need for a father is innate, and a child will seek it automatically. And if there is no father and there is no mother there, then they will create a mother figure.
The teacher will be.
A teacher will become that surrogate that steps in to meet that need. The great tragedy, Dr. Peace, is that if no teacher steps in and fulfills that need, then next there will be a game. So
There will be some other
That's right.
elder
Yes.
in the sense of an older person.
That's right. And it will start moving further and further and further away
from the
from
family.
the purity and the wisdom and the love that would have been available at the core experience of the child and mother. The teacher's the next closest person that will give you that kind of love that you will get from
In the traditional Africa, the child's first teachers are members of his own family. Is that
Yes.
not correct, Dr.
Yes,
Sithole?
exactly. There's socialization. There's informal education where you are educated by members of your family. They are educating you in maths and arithmetic and all, just as members of the family. Then you go to a formal situation in school. But they never cease to educate you if they continue to be your teachers.
I remember that you told me that when you came first to America to study and wanted to bring your children to America along with your wife after
Yes.
you were here, that your mother said you might not bring the children. She would not allow you to bring your children. How did you allow your mother to make decisions like that for you as an adult
Yes.
father?
Even if you're 35 or 40, your mother is still your mother. Your father is still your father. If he says no, that's it. You can't say, I'm 35, I'm an adult. No, you're still my son.
Yes.
Yeah, you're still my son. Even at 35, 40, you're still my... So, in this case, I had made all arrangements for my wife to come with my 2 girls. And then she went to say goodbye to my mother. And my mother said, hi, good, you are alone, are going to go to America, but leave the children. And she said, but my husband said I should bring them. I said, no, I don't care what your husband said. The children are going to remain here, I'll take care of them. And then she found me and wanted me to intervene. I called my mother, talked to my mother, said, Mom, please allow the children to come. I said, no, these children can't be struggling with you. You're a student over there. And how do I know that they will be, how they will be treated there, who will be their babysitter and all. And I said, I might stay here for 10 years. And she said, it doesn't matter, 10 years is fine with me, they'll be here with me. And I had to go to another level, ask my grandfather to intervene. And he came, he grilled me first. Why do you want the children to go there and all that? I said, but I'll be studying and I want to see them grow. And after he put me into some grueling himself, he said, well, I'll go and talk to your mother. And then he went to talk to my mother, and my mother agreed, and my children came.
So that is how you solve the problem.
I was 34 at the time.
So that is how you solve the problems.
Yes.
You go to other members of the family to intervene on your behalf. You don't defy your elders.
If she had stood her ground, I would have left them there. But I had to go to other members, and my grandfather intervened, and the 2 children came along.
What is the value of obeying your parents after you're an adult? Can someone answer that question for those who might be listening?
Well, people say the Bible said, obey thy father and thy mother so that you can get this. But all societies say, if you obey your parents, because they are wiser than you will benefit from their wisdom. And that's why if you obey your parents, you already have an input that they already had. You don't need to be 35 to benefit from somebody who is 35 when you are 16, because they already... So that principle of obeying your parents is a universal principle. Some defy it because they develop other principles along the way, and then it causes problems later on when they have to replace, where that respect of parents tends to be disrespect of everything. If you disrespect parents, then you disrespect institutions. You disrespect the church, you disrespect the school, the principal, and at the end you have to bring guns to bring discipline in school.
And metal detectors and security guards.
Metal detectors.
So
and police. The ultimate consequence of the failure to develop this capacity to obey is the police.
Sure.
It's interesting that Baba pointed out very obviously one of the first benefits of obeying thy mother and thy father, in addition to your long days, and having the benefit of their higher knowledge, their experience, you see, that can save you a lot of unnecessary trial and error. The other benefit is directly related to the spiritual nature of the relationship. It's interesting. This act of obeying actually becomes, Dr. Peace, in its final analysis, a spiritual practice. Because what happens is this, is that when you are obeying your mother or you're obeying your father, or any of the people who are symbolic to your mother and father, or any of the institution, what it causes you to do, especially if there's some resistance, is to move outside of the narrow confines of your own likes, dislikes, and preferences. These likes and dislikes and preferences are reflections of being rooted in your lower nature, you see. And this opportunity to obey, this
opportunity to obey.
That's right. And this additional pull of their love for you helps you to raise above the narrow confines of your own likes, dislikes, and preferences. And you have to remember that in ancient times, not just in African culture, but in all cultures, and probably because African culture informed all of the culture, that you will find one of the fundamental definition of spiritual growth is development of the ability to function outside of and beyond the narrow confines of your likes, your dislikes, and your preferences. And the ideal was that a child and a mother and a father is an ideal school.
Configuration.
It's a school to learn this in. And because the parent loves, and it makes it easier to make the transition.
Right.
So
in my research on the black family, I find that people in the South are still keeping to the family traditions in the sense that the neighbor can discipline the neighbor's child, and they will respect that. And that's what we have in Africa, that if you're an adult, you're an adult to all the children. Your neighbors and all of those children who are there can be disciplined by you, not because you belong to that family. If they see you do wrong, they say, stop it. And then you have to stop, because they are your parents, because they are equal to your parents.
This was more true during the period when I grew up than I think it may be now, but you're quite right about that. Sure. In fact, if you misbehaved at school, you hoped the word didn't get home because you knew what you had coming. If you disobeyed in the neighborhood, you hoped that no one told your mother, because when your mother got the news, you were destined to get a spanking, and you hoped that your mother would not then inform your father, because if your father found out about it, it would be even worse. We are now living in cities and urban centers where people are anonymous to each other, where you do not know the family in 207 doesn't know the family in 310. And so people don't know each other and they don't trust each other. And there's no sense of community, and therefore children can get away with murder, even in the public schools. Because when you said the African culture informs other cultures, I thought about how in the parochial schools, like in the Catholic schools, every child in that school situation respects every teacher who is called a sister in some cases, if she's a member of the order. But the point is that a child would no more disobey one sister than another who was his homeroom teacher. In the public schools, you have a different situation. When a child is out of the earshot or eyesight of a teacher in his classroom, he may not only disobey, but he might in fact sass, as we use the word. Certainly, you know, defy or dispute another teacher. It is in our vested interest as a community, and especially those of us who are teachers, to preserve the family, because Dr. Satoli has made an excellent point here, and that is that if the child cannot become a functioning, harmonious member of the family, he cannot do it in the community. So the school has got to want to support the family, to support the stability of the family, to help families to stay together, to help young people to learn how to parent their children, to be the surrogate parent, to go beyond the 2:30 or 3:15 time for dismissal, and be interested in these children and in what happens in their lives.
Dr. Peace, they have to understand their mother or father teachers. They can't create that split and just be a teacher, because that's meaningless. is counterproductive and impotent. What makes them effective is the degree that they're rooted in that mother-father principle that is manifest in the process of teaching. Baba Satoli pointed out another very interesting thing when he talked earlier, is that the basis of the respect is not so much on the actual contents of what the father is saying. It's on his behavior that he had modeled for his father
Right.
and the mother for their mother. And what happens, you see, is that if parents themselves did not model that kind of respect and obedience toward their own parents, they can hardly expect to achieve it with lectures and books with their own children, because this won't process. Now, it's interesting because these models, these beliefs, these values, these styles, these lifestyles are all set in place before that child is even 9. And up until the time and age of 9, a child learns only through imitation and modeling behavior. It's the only faculty available to them, you see. And once they have seen mom disrespect her mother, not honor her mother, now it's not possible, you see. So we have to understand that we have to, as parents, model for our children how to be a child.
Very excellent.
You see?
Yes.
We have to do that.
You know, you brought a point to my mind when I thought about not only do we have to teach our children how to relate to us as parents by the way in which we relate to our own parents, but do we not have to teach our children how to be wives and husbands?
Of course.
Does not a man teach his children how to treat their wife by the way he treats his own wife?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
By the way he treats, talk to us about the treatment of the mother of the children.
Yes, in the African society you have a father, but he is also a husband. And he behaves as a husband to his wife, and the children see that, and they learn. And he's a father to them, and they behave to him as a father. And that his behavior, therefore, is twofold. He behaves as a father and as a husband. And the same with the mother. He behaves as a mother and the wife. And that is within the family. But there is no case where the child can say to his father, "This is my mother's husband. This is my mother's husband." To him, it's just the father all the time, and respect him as a father. But he also knows that this father is my mother's husband. He sees the relationship. If the relationship is good, he will be a good husband or wife.
Of course.
And you talked, I remember, about the joking relationship between the father and the mother.
Yes,
This ability to let off steam, as it were,
yes.
to be able to be candid, to be able to say things that need to be said without being offensive and without doing damage.
Yes, let me talk about joking relationship between brothers and sisters
First. All right.
There's a joking relationship between brother-in-law and sister-in-law. If my wife is angry about what I did, she may not just approach me directly. She'll go to my brother and accuse my brother of what I did and scold him for what I did. My brother
She will blame your brother
she'll blame
for
my
your
brother for my behavior and scold him. But my brother will accept it and laugh at it because it's a joking relationship. They will laugh at it. And then my brother will come to me and say, "Brother, let's do this, let's do this." And I will change. I will respect my brother because he's my brother. And he will correct me without having caused conflict between me and my wife. And that's true with me. If I have my sister-in-law, if I'm angry about anything about my wife, I avoid her. I just go to her sister-in-law, to her sister, my sister-in-law, and I scold my sister-in-law about what kind of a wife are you? What you do these kind of things, and she will laugh it out. she will laugh it out, but she will go to her sister and correct her sister.
Yes.
And eventually, whatever I was complaining about is corrected without having had to fight it.
And have an argument.
Have an argument.
It's called natural conflict resolution.
So you have that.
African
African
conflict
style. That's right. African style.
Also, before we got married, I called my wife by her first name. But after we get married, that stops. She cannot be called now call her by her family name. You are mother from such and such a family, mother from Buthelezi, mother from Zwane, mother. You use the family name. But after you get a child, that also goes. Then you use the child, father of Bongiwe, father of...
Tell them that Bongiwe is your daughter.
Bongiwe is my
When you
daughter.
have a child, then you no longer are just addressed by a first name.
Yeah.
You're addressed as the mother or the father of this
Bongi,
child.
Of this child, our child. My wife addresses me as father of Bongiwe, and I address her as mother of Bongiwe. That upgrades the relationship.
Yes.
Now it brings Bongiwe to us. That this relationship has produced Bongiwe, and so that is how we call each other. Yes. But all other people are still calling her by the first name and all, but we have upgraded our relationship.
Beautiful, isn't it? Beautiful.
So, and the same is true then if my wife wants something special to me, and she can call me father of Bongiwe, but if I am not agreeable, she might say, well, let's go and buy a new car. And I may say, well, why don't you wait for next year until new cars come in. And if she really wants the car this year, she will call me Mondise. Mondise is the name of my great-great-grandfather. Or she may call me Jobe, the name of my great-great-grandfather. If she calls me Jobe, which is a name of endearment in my family, we have got to get that car this year. And that car will come because she respected me and used the name of my dear great-grandfather, and therefore we will get that car. The same is true with me. If I wanted something to be done and she didn't want it, I can call her great-grandfather and say, but please, Shenke, let's get this. And she will accept because I'm now using her great-grandfather's name. And those names are avoided. You can't use them every day because they will lose their meaning.
Effectiveness.
Their effectiveness.
Yes.
You use them specifically when you need them. And Mondise, Jobe, so all those are terms of endearment, but they are great-great-parents.
Think of the terms that we use and that we hear in the rap music. We have the bees with attitude, and all kinds of other names, names that disrespect women, and it's men calling their women out of their names, calling themselves out of their names, calling the children out of their names. No avenues, no creative ways for conflict resolution. And I know the Bhagwan, that you are a part of the anger clinic, and I know that conflict resolution is your expertise.
Sure.
What about conflict resolution in the circumstance that we find ourselves where there's so much hostility among us?
Well, of course, Dr. Peace, one of the first things you must realize is that a lot of that conflict has this origin in the language that we use when we talk to each other. Language that does not connote tenderness, endearment, affection, love, respect. That language has a counter effect on the person on the other receiving end of that. And so just the way we talk, the way we speak, and you have to remember, Dr. Peace, that in the spiritual system, that actually gave birth to that kind of culture that we are referring to when we talk about Africa, ancient Africa, Egyptian, and all of these other things. The spiritual system that developed that kind of mindset has, as a part of the training, rhetoric. This art of just talking. And it's very interesting that you find that as that deteriorates, so goes the interrelationship among people. When someone walks up to you and calls you a bitch, now this doesn't trigger any loving response in you, you see. So the language itself is part of the problem. I just wanted to backtrack to something that Baba was talking about with his mother and father and the joking that goes on, and just show you how even though we have been impacted on by this slavery and all of these hundreds of years and centuries of being buried underneath the avalanche of Western culture, still, if you listen closely, you can hear our heart is still beating with the spirit of our ancestor, because quite frankly this stuff never leaves us. I wanted to point that out to the audience, that they too have an opportunity to become a Baba, so they mustn't get discouraged. In my own family, one of the greatest contributions to my own development as a human being, and collectively now, in every aspect of what it means to be a human being, did not come from the universities. It came from my mother and father, because during my formative years, indeed up until the day I'm 45, I never experienced my mother and father arguing or fighting at all. That one quality is responsible for my humanity.
You come from a large family,
Come from a large
11
family,
children.
11 children.
So there must have been areas of disagreement.
Of course.
But you were not allowed to witness those.
They never did it in front of us, intuitively understanding the damage that would cause. Contrast that to those who have become completely unconscious, in a comatose state, who no longer can even respond to that deep intuitive understanding that you should not fight in front of your children, that are fighting in front of their children, cursing in front of their children,
cursing the children, not in front of them.
Yeah, cursing the children. And now you expect that this relationship will be healthy, and what will they model? That's how they will relate to their children. And so language is a very important thing. We have to understand that words have power. All words, not just holy words, mantras, hakus, japa, these different words. Every word you speak has power. Now, mantras and japas and hakus have power that is to the positive side of your development. But these anti-hakus, these negative hakus, will take you in another direction. But in any event, the language that you use, the words that you use, and more particularly the tone. Being a therapist, I find that very often, even if you got the words right, the rhetoric right, if the tone is wrong, then you're still in trouble. So the tone has to be right, you see. And then there's a spot you go that even exceeds words and tone. This is interesting. As Baba Sitoli pointed out, by just calling him a Jobi,
Yes.
it touches something altogether different. It touched something altogether different. It goes to a whole different spot in him. You see, it triggers his love faculty. There are certain words, when spoken, triggers the person faculty to love, and they have no option. That's why he said he become powerless now. Now, what can he do? If this woman said, Jobi, now he really becomes powerless. He must do this thing because love flows. It gushes out. Nothing you can do.
And she respects that because she doesn't abuse it.
She doesn't abuse it.
She doesn't, every time she wants something, she doesn't come in and use the same term.
That's right. And so the whole ideal in the West, you see, there's a posture in yoga called Siddhansana. It means standing on your head instead of your feet. Western culture is like that. Western culture is standing on its head. It's in a Siddhansana. It needs to stand on its feet. It needs to be just the reverse, you see. And certainly, since we can't wait on Western culture to shift, because quite frankly, perhaps the illness is pathological and built into it, as people of African descent, it is comforting to know that we have buried in us the capacity to restore this kind of art.
Exactly. For one thing, here in the city of Chicago, we have Dr. Satole,
Yes.
who's teaching, who is my colleague at the Center for Inner City Studies. We both teach in the Department of Inner City Studies Education, where this kind of knowledge is made available. And then we have you with the Anger Clinic, and of course with the Sunday Discourse that you offer at Kennedy King College, the Spiritual Discourse. So there are avenues to our restoration. You know, we're not just sitting here having an armchair discussion about these things, but we actually try to implement them in our lives, and we try to disseminate them to other people, because we are in a sorry state as a people, and our state is deteriorating. And it's interesting that we have one day a year on which we celebrate our mothers, one day a year on which we call Father's Day. And we have no understanding that honoring mothers and fathers is 24/7.
Absolutely.
It's every day of the year, every year for as long as you live. And so we need to get that in perspective, and we need to also understand that as adults in the community, we are responsible for all of the children in the community. They are all our family. They are all our children. And we have a responsibility for their development, and we must assume that responsibility without somebody having to come and ask us.
Absolutely.
Why is it that we don't do that? Why don't we just naturally assume that we have? I think the teachers who succeed in the classroom are the teachers who regard their students as their children.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm finding that to be more the case. I do a lot of workshops with the Board of Education, particularly focused in on training teachers, because as I mentioned earlier, the teachers are the key. In any culture, if the teachers, so go that culture. Nothing can stand without them. You know, they are the cement that holds everything together. Because they're the only one that can segregate for a mother or a father, or for, you know, they could take any position for a friend. You know, they could step in any of the roles that may come up missing.
And
so
they are the ones at this point who spend the most time with the children. The children are in school.
That's right.
5 hours a day at least from the time, well, some of them go to nursery school very early. So the children spend a lot more time in a relationship with their teachers than they do in a relationship with either parent when parents work.
And Dr. Peace, at a time when they are forming their own worldviews, at a time when they're shaping and forming their own philosophies and their own belief system, at a time when they are modeling, at a time when their rational faculties is not yet in place, their imitation is indiscriminate, you see. And to be in the presence of a teacher who is modeling what she's trying to teach is very important. And you mentioned earlier that all of us have a responsibility, and the way we can fulfill that responsibility, all of us is not going to be a Malcolm X. All of us is not going to be a Martin Luther King. We won't
Or
have
Mandela.
Or Mandela. You see, but that doesn't make us less important than a Mandela, or less needed than a Mandela, or therefore even less impotent. What we do directly impacts on the rest of the community as well. You'll be surprised by your modeling the behavior that is appropriate in relationship to your friend, in relationship to your neighbor, in relationship to your wife, in relationship to your mother, your father, etc. That is the greatest contribution that you can make, is to be that thing.
To be a real model.
To be a real model, to be a real human being, and that ripple will flow. And that's what teachers do. You see, almost every one of us sitting here today probably was impacted by a teacher somewhere.
Well, you know, I think that when we talk about honoring mothers and fathers, that we ought to understand that teachers are naturally a part of that group, that all adults are part of that group, no less than the biological mothers and fathers. And we must also remember that because you don't have biological children does not mean that you don't have children. If there are children in the community, they are your children. They do not have to come from your loins to be your children. But I think that we've done a good service today, because what we want to do is to raise the level of awareness of our community toward the model, the African model of family that was so inclusive. I get offended when I hear the term extended family, because the African family is not an extended family. If the European family begins to add the sisters as mothers rather than aunts, the brothers as fathers rather than uncles, then it will be an extended family. But when you have a family model that already includes everyone in the community as a parent, if everyone in the community is a part of the family, then you don't call it an extended family. What the nuclear family needs to be recognized as is a dwarf. Yes. It is a miniature version of a version of family that is without some members that ought to be in place.
Dr. Peace, it is a contraction.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. It's an abbreviation.
An abbreviation.
It's an apostrophe. Yes. Right. That's what it is. And the African model of the family is a model that we need to seek to put in place by making certain that we understand that it takes a whole village to raise one child, and we have some dysfunctional, disabled people in the village at the moment, which we need also to try to uplift. Right. And we need, of course, to uplift ourselves and not get so self-satisfied that we think that we have all the answers and all the other people don't have any answers and are doing everything wrong. I think in these final few moments, I would just like to thank you very much for participating on this program, Honor Thy Fathers and Thy Mothers. And I would hope that this program would be shared. I would hope that we have given some insight that would be pursued. I don't consider this one program as being revolutionary. I think that we have touched on some good things. When Dr. Sithole started to talk about names, the different names by which you are addressed at different stages of your maturation, I almost asked him to tell us his name. But I knew that if I asked Dr. Sithole to give us his name, that it would take the entire radio, the entire program for him to be able to give it. But could you give us a little bit of your name, Dr. Sithole, so we will, and would you tell us just in briefly why there are so many names in your name? Perhaps that may be all the time we have, but I'd just like you to say something about that.
My name is Thamsanqa, which means a gift. Thamsanqa. When a child is born, when the mother is expecting a child, she will always think, what name will I give to my child? What name will I give to my child? Not only the name, what song will I give to my child? What song will I sing to my child? What song? She will have a song, she will have a name, and this is the name my mother gave me. Elkin is the name that I was given to go to school because the missionary did not accept our African names in school. So we were given Elkin, James, Horace, and all those names. But our names are Thamsanqa, Vusmuzi, Sithole. My son was born in Chicago, but his name is Uchozanul Bovanul Dagandaganuko Mundul Mantinyanul Bugumtul Metimsegatizomakel Musgantipind. That's his first name. The second name is Fiso Sendot, and so on. But when we went to school, the teacher said, oh, it's too long. We'll just have Josana. So that's how our names are. The name describes you, who you are, where you come from. Just by looking at the names of the people in Africa, you can tell the events that took place at the time. If you were born during the time of the floods along the Mississippi, your name will reflect the flood at the time of your birth. If you are born at the time when Mandela assumes presidency of South Africa.
What names may we look for now?
Well,
that's interesting.
Oh, yes, sure.
There will be children born, and they will have names that reflect Mandela.
One name is Nkululeko, which means freedom.